41 Islam and Science. The most important reason why prophets and heavenly books were sent in the first command that is absolutely necessary to be communicated is to declare that the Creator of the heavens and earth exists, that He is one, that He has superior attributes such as knowledge and others, and that His power and greatness are infinite. Because most people believe the things which they see and hear as they see and hear them and cannot understand their inner natures and delicate particulars. Allahu Ta'ala in His books described the moon, the sun, and the stars, which are the symptoms of His existence and greatness, the biggest and the most obvious creatures which amaze people very much and which seem precise in every respect, so that every sort of people could understand them. By not explaining their calculations, laws, and inner natures, He did not force the ignorant majority to busy themselves with the things which they could not understand, and He encouraged the intelligent, wise, and distinguished among mankind in every century to understand them by studying them. Man's discoveries have been changing in process of time. Those discoveries that were thought of as correct and dependable at one time have been understood to be wrong afterwards. Because the people of each century have believed in the correctness of the latest discoveries of their time, the beliefs of each century has been different from those of the others. These beliefs did not become sins or a matter of disbelief, for the beliefs that are sinful are those which disagree with the Prophet's books and which deny what is stated in them. To protect His slaves against disbelief and sins, Allahu Ta'ala did not explain scientific knowledge which not everybody could understand in His books, but He only pointed it out, and by describing the earth, the sun, and the skies as they appear, He commanded us to take a warning from them and to understand His existence and His greatness. While explaining the command, introduce me to my slaves through hikmat and through beautiful preachings, which is in the 125th ayat of Nahl Surah. Qadi Baidawi says, it means, communicate to the intelligent and to the educated through scientific knowledge and to the ignorant populace who follow their emotions by describing what is seen. At one time, upon reading about the things that were declared as they appeared in their books, Jews and Christians thought that the facts were so that the earth was smooth and motionless and that the sun was turning around it, that the sky was put over the earth like a tent, that Allahu Ta'ala sat on a throne like a man and managed all affairs. Because scientific knowledge, which is discovered through experiments, disagreed with these beliefs of theirs, they said that scientists were irreligious. Upon this unjust judgment, scientists attacked Judaism and Christianity. For example, William Draper, who is famous for his enmity against religions, says in his book Conflict Between Knowledge and Religion, there is no human being who is apart from the universe, dominating the universe, and can do what he wishes. This word of his shows that he thinks of Allahu Ta'ala as a human being and therefore denies Him. At another place by stating, there is a power in the universe which dominates everything, yet this is not the God whom the priests believe. He indicates that he thinks that Allahu Ta'ala should be the greatest of the powers of physics and chemistry. As it can be understood, the irreligious ones among scientists have either rightfully attacked the things which the priests and the ignorant populace have misunderstood, or they have denied the imaginary beliefs that were inculcated into their minds and which clashed with their time's scientific knowledge which they took for granted. If they had read and understood the scientific information which Islamic savants had derived from the Quran with its subtlety and correctness, they all would have seen the fact and become Muslims willingly. While explaining the 8th ayat of Nahl Surah, do you see the mountains stand motionless, but in fact they are moving like clouds? Qadi Baidawi states the mountains which, as you see, seem to stay in their places, are traveling fast through space. When big objects move speedily in a direction, those who are on it do not feel its motion. In the interpretation of the 33rd ayat of Anbiya Surah, Background Iradi writes that Da'ak and Kalbi said that the moon, the sun, and the stars rotated about their axes and revolved in their orbits. While explaining the 29th ayat of Baqarah Surah, Background Iradi says, Asiruddin Ayabari, the author of the physics book Adaya and of the logic book Isaguji, used to teach with the astronomy book entitled Mahasti by Ptolemy. Somebody who considered the use of such a book as intolerable asked him with a harsh voice why he was teaching it to Muslim children. He answered that he was interpreting the 6th ayat in Surah Kahf, which purports, Don't they see how beautifully I have created the earth, the skies, the stars, and the planets? Thus giving him a beautiful reply. Imam Iradi writes in his interpretation that this reply of Abari's was correct, and stated that those scientists who observe Allah's creatures understand the infinitude of His power very well. Please read the 24th chapter in the first fascicle. Muhammad bin Hassan ibn Haytham explored the laws concerning the reflection of light in mirrors. Europeans call him Al-Hazm. He was born in Basra in 354-965 and died in Egypt in 430-1039. He wrote about 100 books on mathematics, physics and medicine, and most of his books were translated into European languages. Ali bin Abaluzma, from Turkestan, was Dr. His books, which explain his findings in the knowledge of medicine, have been a valuable source in this branch of knowledge. He was the first to draw a diagram of the circulation of blood in the lungs. Also, he was a deep savant in Islamic knowledge. He was well known by the name Ibn an-Nafis. He was born in Kars in Turkestan in 607-1210 and died in Egypt in 687. The famous Muslim surgeon Amr ibn Abdur Rahman Kermani used to perform surgical operations in the hospitals of Andalusia. He died there in 458-1066. Abu Bakr Muhammad bin Zakaria Radi was a great medical doctor in Islam. He was the first to perform an eye operation with scientific methods. He wrote almost 100 books, of which Kitab al-Hawi, Faras Saw and others are proof of his service to the field of medicine. In Europe he is known by the name Rhazes. He was born in the city of Ray in 240-854 and died in Baghdad in 311-923. After receiving his medical education in Baghdad, he became a specialist. He wrote valuable books on medicine and on chemistry, too. Abu Bakr Ahmad bin Ali Radi is another personality, and he was a scholar of Hanafi fiqh. He died in 730 in Baghdad. The famous Ibn Hazm Ali bin Ahmad proved in his book Aleph Asl that the earth was round through ayats and hadiths 9 centuries ago. The earth's diameter and inclination angles toward the sun were measured in the deserts of Sinjar and Kufa by Musa bin Shakir's sons, Ahmad and Muhammad, in the time of Khalifa Ma'mun. The tools for astronomy made by these two brothers are clear documents for the importance which the Muslims of that time laid on knowledge and science. Ahmad died in 265 and Muhammad died in 259, 873 AD. Their books on algebra and astronomy were translated into English by Lorenz, and in 1247, 1831 AD, they were edited in London together with the Arabic versions. In high schools in Europe, none of the names of these people, who are only a few among the many other scientists, is taught to the students. Nor in the books of science translated from them is anything written for Muslim children about their ancestors' discoveries. The names of Islamic savants who had great discoveries are not given at all. Those Christians who did something rather insignificant are praised as scientists. This enmity towards Islam has even spread over Islamic countries, too. The Indian Mullah Qudsi, in his book Asrar-i-Malakat, collected the meanings which Islamic savants had given to those ayats about the earth, the moon, the sun, the sky and the stars. Thus he proved that they fully agreed with today's modern discoveries. He presented the book to Sultan Abdul Majid Khan, who received it with pleasure. Hayat Zaid Halil Sharaf Effendi of Elbistan translated and explained the book, giving it the title Afkar-i-Jabarat, which was published in Istanbul in 1265 AH. After reading Islamic books, scientists have admired the Quran, understanding that it has predicted every experiment, every new discovery precisely as it appeared. The ignorant, who know nothing of science, of Islamic books, read the books written by the enemies of Islam or by priests. Hence, they misunderstand Islam and become enemies of religion. Like these people, some people who have become enemies of Islam blindly give themselves such titles as poet, journalist, novelist, admirer and supporter of Turkish culture, and even man of religion or specialist of Islamic history. These individuals try to make youngsters irreligious by means of writings full of very loathsome lies and slanders. They drift both themselves and the masses to perdition. Another group of such ignorant people think of themselves as scientists, having read a few scientific books. They attempt to smear Islam, which is as firm as steel, with the denials and objections which the European scientists rightfully directed towards Christianity. These fake scientists never think that a scientist's word will be of value only when he speaks on the branch of science which he studies, or rather, in which he is specialized. His speaking on what is beyond his specialization, especially when he meddles in the affairs of the specialists of other branches, will be funny as well as valueless. Being a scientist does not give one the authority to speak on every branch of knowledge. A good chemist cannot cancel the diagnosis determined by a doctor. A good lawyer cannot assert that there is a scientific error in the report of a chemist. A good engineer cannot penetrate the specialization of a lawyer. Scientists make many errors and mistakes even in their own scientific branches and specializations. While on the one hand accomplishing useful discoveries by solving one or more of the mysteries of matter, power, and life, on the other hand, they have made such great errors so as to bring about global harm to civilization. This fact has many examples. For instance, Newton, a famous and great British mathematician, did unforgettable services to the world of science. Indeed, he discovered the law of universal gravitation, the basis of modern astronomy, and when he was only 23 years old, he discovered field glasses that are referred to with his own name. Also, by experimentation, he proved that white light could be broken up into 7 colors, while, on the other hand, by saying that light is made up of particles radiated from a source of light, he hindered this branch of physics from making progress for many years. Afterwards, upon the establishment of the theory of vibration, it was completely understood that Newton was wrong. Likewise, the French chemist Lavoisier, who is called the father of chemistry today, and who indeed eradicated Aristotle's wrong theories and opened a new scientific way to experimental knowledge by introducing a balance to chemistry, rendered much service towards the improvement of science up to today's state, on the one hand. But, on the other hand, he made such big errors in the field of chemistry, in which he is specialized, that such words of his, which were transferred into books and taught in universities simply because they were his discoveries, would cause a student of junior high school to fail his exam if he used them. For example, he used to call chlorine gas a compound, an oxide, and he used to explain the acids wrong. Lavoisier's worst mistake was his tainting his own valuable and accurate discoveries by attempting to explain them by means of an old argument that had been reiterated by irreligious and ignorant people. That is, upon seeing that weight did not change in chemical reactions and upon establishing the law of weight conservation, he said, in nature nothing comes into existence and nothing ceases to exist. Upon hearing this, fake scientists clamored, there is nothing to be created out of nothing. Nor does anything cease to exist. Staining the pages which they issued in the name of scientific books with these black writings, they lulled themselves into the assumption that they had eventually come into possession of a scientific weapon with which to blow out the fortress of Iman, to extirpate the din, and to throw Islam to the ground. In fact, Lavoisier made this error because he thought that chemistry was everything, that Allahu Ta'ala would be limited to the law which he was able to see, and that there were no events other than this law. The understanding of this chemist, Lavoisier, that matter does not increase or decrease in chemical events, reveals the fact that men cannot create or annihilate anything. Like other enemies of religion, he too extracted an erroneous conclusion from his experiments and attacked Islam. But he blemished himself by doing so, for today's knowledge of physico-chemistry has penetrated into the depths of the atom where chemistry could not reach, thus proving that Lavoisier was wrong, and Einstein's theory of relativity has modified the law of the conservation of mass. Hence, it has been understood that matter, contrary to Lavoisier's supposition, is not the basis of the world. As we have seen, scientists have made errors even in their own areas of specialization, thus causing great harm to humanity. We do not mean to say that these errors of theirs have devaluated them within the borders of science. Considering them within the context of their useful discoveries, we praise them for their service to science. Yet, by pointing out the fact that they have made mistakes even in their own specializations, we want to indicate that the dry thoughts of a scientist on a subject which is outside his specialization, especially on religious knowledge which is quite different from, deeper and more extensive than his specialization, is nothing when compared to the words of the superior men of religion, who were really great men equipped with religious knowledge and satiated with religious pleasure. A real scientist will admit this fact quite easily. But people who desire money, that is, those sham scientists who have customarily worn out their lives for a few years and memorized a few things to earn money or to obtain a skill, suppose that a few stereotyped, compressed, and fading drawings in their inanimate brains, no different from motion pictures, are science, attack the superior knowledge of Islam with a courage and excessiveness fostered not by science but by ignorance, destroy themselves, and drift humanity towards eternal perdition. For example, while a scientist is examining a piece of bone which he found among geologic layers and is trying to gather useful information about life, science imposters, on the other hand, hearing of this through a radio or the press, are clamoring, the bones of an ape, the origin of man, have been found. It has become a fact that men originated from apes. They are striving to deceive credulous Muslims. Not understanding or misapplying Darwin's theory of survival of the fittest among the living, they are using it as a weapon to demolish Islam. Yes, for 100 years some biologists, seeing blood groups, blood relations, numbers of chromosomes, physiological and anatomical changes, somatic changes for adaptation, various mutations with the effect of heat, light, X-rays and radium rays, and some chemical substances in animals, paleontologic observations, the event of mitosis division and meiosis division, which follows the former, in all living things, observations of blunted appendages in some animals, e.g., the existence of cecum vermiform appendix in man, the formation of an embryo in all animals with more than one cells and in animals exhibiting the properties of all other animals in its stages of embryo, e.g., observation of such formations as pronephros, mesonephros, gill cracks, and in man's embryo, have supposed that species of animals have been changed. Yes, for 100 years some biologists, seeing blood groups, blood relations, numbers of chromosomes, physiological and anatomical changes, somatic changes for adaptation, various mutations with the effect of heat, light, X-rays and radium rays, and some chemical substances in animals, paleontologic observations, the event of mitosis division and meiosis division, which follows the former, in all living things, observations of blunted appendages in some animals, e.g., the existence of cecum vermiform appendix in man, the formation of an embryo in all animals with more than one cells and in animals exhibiting the properties of all other animals in its stages of embryo, e.g., observation of such formations as pronephros, mesonephros, gill cracks, and in man's embryo, have supposed that species of animals have been changed. Yes, for 100 years some biologists, seeing blood groups, various mutations with the effect of heat, light, X-rays and radium rays, and some chemical substances in animals, paleontologic observations, the event of mitosis division and meiosis division, which follows the former, in all living things, observations of blunted appendages in some animals, e.g., the existence of cecum vermiform appendix in man, the formation of an embryo in all animals with more than one cells and in animals exhibiting the properties of all other animals in its stages of embryo, e.g., observation of such formations as pronephros, mesonephros, gill cracks, and in man's embryo, have supposed that species of animals have been changed. Yes, for 100 years some biologists, seeing blood groups, blood relations, numbers. It is Lamarck, a French doctor, who first wrote that the living developed from the simple to the perfect. In his book Philosophie zoologique, which he published in 1809, Lamarck wrote that the living could multiply from one origin. But the biologists of the same century said that the examples given by Lamarck proved nothing about animals developing from one another, but their adaptation to their environments. Secondly, Charles Darwin, the son of a British biologist, in his book The Origin of Species, which he published in 1859, said, "The living struggle to adapt themselves to their environments. Those who are successful in this life struggle survive and those who fail die. The incidental changes in a creature enable it to survive by adapting itself to the environment." Other scientists objected to this in various ways. Even Darwin acknowledged the fact that he could not understand the formation of such complicated organs as the eye and the brain, and he had to say in his letter which he wrote to a friend of his, "As I think of the construction of the eye, I feel as if I will go crazy." Thirdly, Hugo de Vries, a botanist from Netherlands, observed in plants that different plants came out from a pure species incidentally in that their properties were transferred from one progeny to the next, and he called this the theory of mutation. But, in fact, in mutation new organs do not develop. Furthermore, it is not possible to end the formation of complicated organs, such as the eye and the brain, which issue from the various layers of embryo, simply by the changing of events in the theory of mutation. Lastly, paleontologists admit the fact that each living species can change within its own species, and that a living species does not change into another species. For example, today's echinoderms are the same as the ones of the first paleontologic age. No echinoderm has ever been observed to change into a vertebrate, nor has any fossil been found to indicate this. On the contrary, Hadrat Ibrahim Haki has written in his book Marafatnama that in the construction of the living there is a development from the simple to the most perfect man with examples, and he has explained that this does not mean that the species change from one another. Allahu Ta'ala declares, "Observe matter, the changes in matter. I created these for you. Utilize all of them. And also, observe how the young develop in the events of life. See that all are based upon regular, scientific principles, and thus understand my existence and my greatness." In order to eradicate Islam, the enemies of Islam extract unsound thoughts and depraved ideas from physical, chemical, biological, and astronomical events. By propounding these slanders of theirs under the name of knowledge and scientific information to the youth, they deceive Muslim children. However, scientific progress and new discoveries expose Allah's existence, His oneness, His power, and knowledge clearly, thus supporting Islam. Lest we might be deceived by those who attack our Iman, we should learn and understand scientific knowledge in high schools and universities well. Real scientists see how childish, how ignorant the words of the enemies of religion are. It is notable that in none of the theories above has man been said to have originated from monkeys. It has not even occurred to the minds of scientists. Yes, it has been observed that there has been a process of evolution in the living within the course of time, yet such changes have taken place within each species. For example, the skeleton of a man called Cro-Magnon has been found among new layers of the fourth prehistoric age. As different from our skeletons as it is, paleontologists have stated that it was one of the first human beings. On the other hand, skeletons of monkeys called anthropoid have been found which lived during the end of the third age and which were unlike today's monkeys. Anthropologists state that they are monkeys. But fake scientists, that is, atheists, say that the man called Cro-Magnon and the monkey called anthropoid are the fossils of man's first ancestors, or they are the fossils forming a transition between man and monkey. Biologists observe the difference between man and monkey only with respect to matter. However, the greatest difference between man and animals is man's soul. Men have souls. The honor of humanity comes only from this soul. This soul was given to Hadrat Adam first. Animals do not have this soul. Materialists and philosophers, knowing nothing of this soul, may suppose that man is close to the monkey. Even though the figure and the construction of the earliest men were similar to the monkey, man is man. For he has a soul. The monkey is an animal, for it is deprived of a soul and of the superiorities given by the soul. As it is seen, man and animal are quite different. There can never be a transition between them. They cannot change into one another. In fact, centuries ago it was written in Islamic books, e.g., in the foreword to Ibn Haldun Tarihi and on the 28th page of Marafatnama, that among the animals the monkey was the closest to man. See the 39th chapter of the first fascicle. It is written in Bajat al-Fatawa, monkeys are not the descendants of those ancient people who were changed into monkeys. It is wrong to say that monkeys are of human descent. For those humans who were transformed into monkeys did not live more than 3 days. They were annihilated. Of the various similar examples which come to our mind, by the way, being embarrassed on behalf of science and knowledge, we will mention this fact: the microscopic, one-celled animals called amoeboids multiply by fission, that is, their cytoplasm and nucleus divide into two. A biologist in North America clove the amoeba, its cytoplasm and nucleus in the middle, and saw that both parts went on living. This process is the normal means by which amoebas multiply. Moreover, this experiment does not always give the same result. Reading about this in a magazine, a mathematician, an expert of calculation, gathered some youngsters and said, "In America, amoeboids are being cloven and killed and then enlivened again. The mystery of life has now been solved. Dead cells are being enlivened. I read about it a few years ago. There are perhaps more improvements now." In this way he tried to deceive youngsters by imbuing them with the idea that science was enlivening the dead, that men were giving life, never to the dead, that there was no power, no creator other than science and nature, and that the concept of Allah had been, never, fabled by earlier ignorant people. How appalling! An irreligious mathematician, being unable to find any dot to blemish Islam within the area of mathematics, which extends from infinity to infinity, attacks with the wrong understanding he derived from events unknown to him in another branch of science. This case is very astonishing, very lamentable. Wouldn't such base behavior of a person who received an advanced education blemish the name of an advanced education? Would even a person with a nominal education talk so ignorantly? We should not believe the thieves of faith, or the impostors of science, who, after hearing of the experiments and words of scientists, mask their own lies and plans with those words and try to poison the youngsters and rob them of their faith.